Alright students, I've moved into the backyard. You see my lovely redwood trees and green grass and all these nice things back here. I'm still in San Juan. I knew you were concerned about that, but I think I'm probably doing okay. Somehow I'm doing okay even without you. I don't know. I'm sure there's an emotional vacuum in my life on the beach in San Juan right now. Just thinking of what I'm missing with 7th period. Maybe not. Okay. Right, well, here we go. We're going to talk about David Hume a little bit today. Now, David Hume's a very important philosopher. A lot of contributions. Christians, I think, need to take him quite seriously. He's in the same kind of tradition as Locke and Hobbes. He's an empiricist, but in his case, he's often referred to as a radical empiricist. Basically, somebody who says that we can only really know what we get from sense experiences. Everything else exists behind this sort of shroud of unknowability, or at the very least imperceptibility. We can't see it at the level of knowing, if that makes sense. In other words, we can have convictions about certain things, we can live as if they're true, but to actually know that we know something, the only thing we can know that we know is what we experience in the world, the brute facts of our sense experiences. Now, how does he arrive at that conclusion? Well, that's what I kind of need to break down with you here. All right, so jump to number 3 there, 3 through sort of 8 and 9. We're going to kind of fire through those pretty quick, all right? So what he does here is he kind of divides the contents of the minds in a thing, well, he puts it all under this category of perceptions. And then he breaks down perceptions into 2 sort of categories. So you got impressions and ideas. All right, so now what are impressions? Impressions can be simple, or I'm going to abbreviate this, composite. All right, so what we're talking about with impressions, that's the sort of the most immediate of our sense experiences. So the simple impression would be something like, I just touched something smooth on the table here. I'm looking at lovely green grass. I'm hearing Mr. Sutherland talk to me through a video, and I don't even like hearing him talk to me in person. Nobody would be thinking that in my class, would they? So those kinds of things, those are simple impressions, right? Now, what's a complex or a compound or composite impression? That would be something like, well, a symphony, right? So you hear a symphony, and you know that that can be broken down into its composite parts, into simple impressions. So you have various notes combined, things like that, various sounds combined. A painting would fit into that category. So those kinds of things would be compound impressions. Ideas, what those are actually a leap away from the basic facts of sense impressions from the world. So that would be stringing things together from our memories to construct something that goes beyond the actual impressions themselves. So, for example, look under number 6 is an encounter. So simple impressions or sensations, just an encounter with the world. 7, the compound impression, so that would be something like hearing music, as I mentioned. Number 8, ideas or faint images. This is where we get to where he kind of takes an interesting turning. Ideas are faint images of our impressions in thinking and reasoning. Okay, so what are some examples of this kind of thing? Well, I give you a couple in 9 and 10 there. The notion of me, right, who I am. He would say even that is an idea which is put together through a series of impressions. So we take in these experiences from the world, all of our memories, and we string them together, but then we interpret them, and we sort of have, we build our personality from these experiences from the world, and those kinds of things are constructs, ideological constructs. So I build the idea of me from these experiences. So to make his point stronger, you think in terms of if somehow you got hit on the head or something, right, and you lost 50% of your memories, or if you had some sort of disease that really attacked your brain and your memories. You think of people who talk about Alzheimer's disease all the time. I mean, they talk about how they feel like they're losing the person before they lose the person. Well, that kind of gives some validity, I would suppose, to some of what Hume's trying to say here. I mean, he's trying to suggest that we are nothing more than a kind of strung together composite of various memories and the interpretations of those memories and things like that. And so we build this ideology from the raw material of our memories, of our experiences. So that's one example of kind of where you could go with philosophy, with his philosophy on this. Another thing you could say is think about something like unicorns, right? So a unicorn, you have simple impressions of horns, you have simple impressions of horses, and so what do? We string them together and create the idea of a unicorn. Now, of course, nobody's had a simple impression of a unicorn in the world. Nobody's had a kind of brute, immediate physical encounter with something like a unicorn. That's an ideological construct from other impressions, if that makes sense. So what about something like God, right? So we're jumping all the way to number 11 here. We have impressions of fathers, good and bad. So what do? We basically form the idea of an all-perfect, all-powerful, all-knowing God who will never let us down, never die. But this is an act of human reasoning, okay? So he's not even saying that God doesn't exist. He's just saying that we can't prove it by human reasoning. Why? Because nobody's had a brute, immediate sense impression of God in the world. It's not a brute fact of immediate sense experience. So that's the only thing you can know for sure, is the things that you've had as immediate impressions, all right, immediate sense experiences from the world. Outside of that, you just can't know, all right, if that makes sense. Okay, so that then leads us to where he's going with all this. Now, this gets really interesting because it doesn't just touch something like religion, doesn't just touch something like how I know myself, etc. But it also touches on things like how can you even know about something like causation, right? So jump to number 12. We'll get back to the teleological argument in a second here, but number 12 there says, ideas formed from simple impressions are just that. They're ideas imposed on a collection of experiences. So this touches on even something as simple as, all right, let's do this. You got billiard ball A, right? And you've got billiard ball B over here. And I shoot this one into this one. All right, now, what have I actually experienced? According to Hume, what I've experienced is I've experienced the impression of A and the impression of B followed in sequence from one another, but I have not experienced causation. Causation is something that I have imposed upon those experiences, right? It's an ideological construct. In other words, I don't experience that A is causing the motion of B, all right? So again, I experience event A and event B. This ball's moving, then that ball's moving. But I don't experience this part right here. I don't experience causation, all right? To make his point clearer, think in terms of if you got up every morning and you heard a rooster crow in the distance, and then a dog barks, and then your mother walks into the room, and the same kind of process to try to wake you up. The same process happens every day. Rooster crows in the distance, dog barks, mom walks into the room. Now, what have you experienced? You've experienced event A followed by event B followed by event C. Has the one caused the other? Well, nobody would, I think, suggest that A and B and C are sort of causally related. But now, Hume wants to ask the question, why not? See, so this gets interesting. All right, have you really experienced causation? Do you know that billiard ball A, I got a helicopter going overhead, hopefully you can still hear me. Somebody's looking for somebody in the neighborhood. So you haven't experienced that billiard ball A caused the motion of billiard ball B. So that could be the case that one day billiard ball A will be hit into billiard ball B and it will just stand still. It won't move at all. You see, you're making a grand assumption about the nature of the world to say that there is this magical thing called causation that knits the whole universe together, when you don't have evidence that such a thing actually exists. All right? The only thing you know is that one event followed another event. All right? So that's an interesting implication for what Hume is suggesting here, to say the least. Now, people have often criticized Hume. They've said, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I mean, of course, billiard ball A is causing the motion of billiard ball B. We can see that, we can experience that. And Hume would say, well, we can operate as though that exists. It's a good hypothesis that there is such a thing as causation, and it's worked for us up to this point. But the point is, you can't know that the universe is so built that the same kinds of sort of causal factors that cause certain events to transpire today will always be like that in the future. That would be an enormous assumption about the nature of the world, which you have no impressions of the future, right, to be able to draw that conclusion, you see. In fact, you would be basing all of it just on the idea of causation that you've built from prior impressions. So, again, he's trying to be very strict to say, what can we know that we know that we know? And we can definitely exist as though there is such a thing as causation, and Hume said that he did, and everybody else did. But the real question is, how can you know that it's true? And Hume says you can't know it based on your experiences. And so therefore it has to come from somewhere else. In other words, it's an ideological assumption. We just sort of assume that it exists. And it's worked for us up to this point. All right, so that's a fascinating kind of conclusion to draw. Now, number 13. Write this in real quick. In our many experiences, we don't observe fixed natural laws. Right? What we observe is we observe events. The natural laws, those are things that are ideas that we build based upon those past experiences. But to project those into the future, that's what Hume is really questioning here. What's that based on? Well, that's based on the idea of these fixed natural laws. It's not based on what we've actually experienced. I mean, could it be that somebody in the future is shoots a billiard ball, like I said, into another one and it doesn't move it? It's theoretically possible, Hume would say, and if that's the case, then what are people going to conclude about the nature of reality then? Well, you're going to have to throw away causation, right? Okay. So number 15 here. 14. The most that I can say is that effect X happened in all observed cases. In other words, there's no provable external principle of causation, only a collection of experiences. All right. So somebody else has had experiences of billiard balls. I've had experiences of billiard balls. That's great. That's wonderful. But then to say I have the logical right to say that that's just the way that the world is, Hume is trying to say you haven't had a simple impression of causation. You have no right to make that claim, that it will always be that way. Right? All right, number 15. The laws of physics, mathematics, causation become habits of mind for Hume, if this is true, in order for us to make sense of the world. In other words, they're just the way that human beings perceive things. So again, it has to do with perception, and he has no problem saying that, these things are definitely ways in which we perceive the world, all right? Things like causation. But the question is, does it fit into the category of things that are irreducibly true, like impressions, like I just touched something smooth, or does it fit into the category of unicorns and God and all the rest of it? And he would say that that's where it fits. So there's a precious few limited things that you can actually know, and that's your immediate sense experiences. All right. 16. This effectively destroys inductive science or any objective principles governing the world, including in ethics. Now, why would I say that? That's a pretty strong claim. The reason it destroys it is because if Hume's right, then again, what you can know is unbelievably limited. All right, you can only really know those experiences that you've had. You can't claim that somebody else has had those same experiences. You can't claim that we're always going to experience the world in the same way in the future. So the question is, why would you go and study, for example, anatomy, right? If I go and study anatomy, and I'm learning about something like the way that the human body regularly works, what Hume is suggesting here is that could be just an ideological construct, that it's always worked in a certain way, we've always experienced it working in a certain way up to this point, but to then project that into the future and to say that it'll always be like that in the future, that we don't have a logical right to make that kind of a leap. The other thing I would say about Hume, and I'll just kind of close with this, is that it seems as though his view is rather self-contradictory as well. I mean, he's trying to say the things you can know that you know that you know are just the sense experiences, the brute facts of sense experience that you draw into the senses from the world. But now, here's a simple question I want to ask Hume. this idea that the only thing we can know for sure are the brute facts of immediate sense experience, is that something itself that is grounded in an immediate sense impression of the world, right? In other words, he's basically saying this. He's saying we can only know the brute facts of immediate sense experience, but we can't know philosophical truths to be true or not, philosophical claims to be true or not. Did you hear the claim? I'll say it again, just so you're clear. We can know the brute facts of immediate sense experience. I just touched something smooth. I can know that. But I can't know philosophical claims to be true or not. Now, is that claim itself something that is just rooted in an immediate impression? Well, of course not. It's an ideological interpretation of experiences, and then saying that this is true for everybody, and so forth. And so it's at that point that I think that that Hume's philosophy dies on the horns of its own rather exclusivist claims. All right, in other words, it's self-contradictory. All right, we'll close with a stupid joke for the day. You guys ready? Yeah, here it is. Rather silly joke. What do you get when you cross a joke with a rhetorical question?